Good evening to all in this beautiful evening. This is another evening of webinars series of IAHP, and I welcome you all to. This would be a great learning experience. This webinar is being organized by CEC committee of IAHP along with CEC committee, all respected IAHP members and all state branches are equally contributing to successful organization of these webinars. As you all know that we bring the best of speakers. So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Deepak Sharma from Oman. He's an international speaker, and today's session would be chairman of the session would be Dr. Ramanna Rao. So he'll be joining soon. To tell about Dr. Deepak Sharma and the topic of the day. We all know these days we are talking about immunity, role of immunity, immune system. So how a homeopath should look at this topic, because it's a scientific topic. And Dr. Deepak Sharma is very able person to justify the topic because he has long experience of 29 years, out of which 26 years he has been practicing in Oman, and most of his referred cases are by the allopaths. So the to coordinate and to work with allopaths, you have to have sound knowledge of the modern science. So he has completed his graduation from India, and from Ireland he has taken his post graduation, and I am very happy to announce that our IAHP group, he is one of the director of IAHP UAE, which was successfully holding events before the lockdown. In UAE there were a lot of events in the pipeline, so hopefully after lockdown there would be more happenings in UAE. So all these beautiful people where there are a lot of restrictions, because it's different from India. In India, it's easy to practice homeopathy, but in these countries, it is really a challenge to practice homeopathy because you have a lot of where all these people they have very limited options of dispensing medicines, prescribing medicines, and then follow-ups. There are a lot of legal restrictions, and to establish themselves in such an odd environment is really a challenge. So not taking much time between audience and Dr. Deepak Sharma, I invite, so he'll be talking for about uh, 1.5 hours. So after at around 6:25, I would ask him to conclude before 6:25 because it's 5:07. So he'll start before 5:10. So 6:25, 1 hour 15 minutes, he can wind up his talk, and then the chairman sir will moderate the session, and finally we'll conclude with a question answer session and then Thanksgiving. So that is the whole program of the evening. So I hope we'll enjoy the evening. We'll learn a lot. So hand over to Dr. Deepak Sharma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm really thankful to IAHP core committee members, directors, Dr. Singh in personal, Dr. M.A. Rao in personal, and Dr. V.K. Gupta in personal, Dr. Tanveer Hussain, to have given me this chance to present my view on immunity today. I also thank all the participants. I also see our Dr. Khanna. Namaskar, Dr. Khanna. After a long time, I'm seeing you. So today's topic, which I have chosen or thought of talking about, is immunity. Now, since COVID-19 pandemic, almost a year back, there has been a flood of webinars, and never before such learning enthusiasm was seen as is seen in the last 9 to 10 months. The most presented webinars in the last 9-10 months I've been seeing have been on COVID and immunity. Now, when most of the homeopaths are encountered with this question, how homeopathy works, the commonest reply is always by immunomodulation. When we say immunomodulation, we also have a duty to understand the immune system where the modulation is.
Hello,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Deepak. Yeah, please,
Yes,
I
sir.
think your screen is not being shown properly. Can you please share your screen once again, or you have not heard?
I have not yet started sharing screen, sir.
Okay, okay,
I'm
okay,
just
okay, okay.
speaking
Sure,
first.
sure,
So
sure,
what I
sure.
was
Sorry
saying
to
was
interrupt.
when most of the patients come to most of our homeopathic clinics, the common question is how homeopathy works, and the common answer is through immunomodulation. Now we have to know what is immunomodulation. What is our immune system? What is our immune response? And if we know that properly, we can relate the action of our medicines. Like we can easily tell the antihistaminic action of our Apis, Bovista, Urtica. We can tell the reparative action of our Arnica, Calendula, Symphytum. So we can explain the action of our medicines on the basis of our understanding of immune system. So it is very, very important to understand the immune system. Now, at the outset, I want to say I'm not here today speaking as a immunologist or as a hematologist, but I'm only sharing my own understanding and my own experience as a homeopath in my clinical practice. So I'll share my screen now. So when we talk of immunity, the term immunity is in a biological context, has historically referred to resistance to pathogens. However, reactions to some non-infectious substances leading to allergies and harmless environmental molecules and tumors, leading to understanding of tumor immunity and autoimmunity. The collection of cells, tissues, and molecules that mediate this reaction is known as the immune system. But then I am not able to. Where?
Yes, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, sorry. I was not able to move forward the cursor.
Okay.
Now, the collection of cells, tissues, and molecules that mediate these reactions is called the immune system. Whereas the coordinated response of these cells and molecules to pathogens and to other substances that comprise an immune response. So what is an immune response? A reaction to microbes as well as to other molecules that are recognized as foreign, regardless of the physiological or pathological consequence of such a reaction. The most important physiological function of the immune system is to prevent or eradicate infection, which we all know, and which we'll all stick to today. In the limited time we have, we cannot go to all the immune responses. So we'll understand the infective immune response. Now, to understand the immune system, let's have a look at the origin of the cells of the immune system. Now, it all starts from a stem cell, which divides into a lymphoid progenitor and a myeloid progenitor. Now, the first distinction is very important as it is more or less dividing the immune system into two functional components. Cells that arise from the lymphoid progenitor are for the most part of the adaptive immunity, which is more complex type of immunity. Cells that arise from the myeloid progenitor are for most part of the innate immunity. Now, if we see, the lymphoid progenitor can produce either a B cell, which is named for bone marrow, and the T cell, which is named for thymus, because they mature in the thymus. And also, lymphoid progenitor makes the NK cell, the natural killer cells, which are actually a part of the immune system. Now, if we see the B cells, they differentiate into the memory B cells and into the plasma cells, whereas the T cells differentiate into the helper T cells, also called CD4 cells, and killer T cells, also called CD8. Now, this is based on the protein they express on their surface. Lymphoid progenitor cells also produce the dendrite cell, which actually is an innate system. Myeloid progenitor, on the other hand, give rise to erythroid progenitor, through which we get RBCs, which are not actually the part of immune system we are discussing today. And it also gives rise to granulocyte macrophage progenitor. Now, this granulocyte macrophage progenitor, that gives rise to monocytes, which travel around the blood, and unless they get converted into macrophages, then monocytes can also get converted into dendrite cells. Then we have the neutrophils, the commonest and the largest white cells. There is a lot of disturbance. Can everybody mute, please? So granulocyte macrophage progenitor gives rise to RBCs. We are not going to discuss that today. And it also gives rise to other white cell components, including neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, monocytes. Monocytes differentiate into macrophages in tissues, and they can also get converted into dendrite cells. Now, eosinophil, basophil, and neutrophils, they are also known as polymorphs. Sir, somebody is talking and I can't talk like this. Dr. Singh?
Respected audience, webinar is going on. Please mute yourself.
So this lot of disturbance. It's not able to hear properly, Mr. Deepak.
Mute yourself, please. Webinar is going on. It's very important to listen, please.
So we were talking about the origin of our immune cells. Now, basic structure of immune system. The immune system is essentially consisting of 3 layers. These layers of defense protect our body from various types of attacks, from microorganisms and even non-living things like toxins and the metals. Now, each layer consists of different mechanism. And if one layer is breached or invaded, the mechanism of action of the layer below will come into play until the attack is successfully controlled. But before going into the functioning of these layers, we have to know a little about the cells of our immune systems. The cells of the immune systems are located in different tissues and they serve different roles in host defense. Most of these cells are derived from bone marrow precursors that circulate in the blood and are called leukocytes or white blood cells. Others are present in the tissue at all times. And some of these cells function mainly in innate immunity, others in adaptive immunity, and some function in both types of immune response. So these cells are grouped into 2 broad categories. The first one is the lymphoid cell, and the second one is the non-lymphoid or myeloid cell, which play diverse roles, including in innate as well as adaptive immune system. Now, tissue residents, these are the cells of our immune system. Now, tissue residents, dendritic cells, macrophages, and mast cells, they serve as sentinels to detect the presence of microbes in tissues and they initiate an immune response. Dendritic cells, so-called because of their many protruding membrane extension, also have the specialized function of capturing microbial antigens and displaying them to the T lymphocytes to initiate adaptive immune response and are therefore known as antigen presenting cells or APCs. These are very important part of the immune system, and to remember these abbreviations as we go along. Then we have the phagocytes, which ingest and destroy microbes. They are the myeloid cells, as we have seen, and they include the neutrophils and the macrophages, which can develop from circulating monocytes and live in tissues much longer than neutrophils do. Macrophages are not only sentinels and destroyers of microbes, they also help to repair damaged tissue. So when we are treating patients of injuries and we are wondering how Arnica is working, so it is not just by its action on the circulatory system, but also through macrophages where it helps in repairing the damaged tissue. Then we have the basophils and the eosinophils, which are related to neutrophils. They secrete chemical mediators that are involved in defending against parasites, and they play a role in allergic reactions such as asthma. So when we are getting results in cases of allergic rhinitis, bronchial asthma, and we are seeing our bladder, our natrum sulf, our ipecac, our antimtat working, it is working at this level of basophil and eosinophil by modifying their action. And what are mast cells? Mast cells reside in connective tissue and mucous membranes and regulate the inflammatory response. They are best known for their role in mediating allergic diseases, autoimmunity, and anaphylaxis. So we see our medicines so many times every day in cases modifying these immune cells and creating an immune response, modifying the immune response in the body. No wonder our patients, after giving Aconite, they get better within few hours when selected correctly. In their immature form, mast cells circulate in the blood, and upon stimulation, they degranulate and release different mediators, which in turn modulate the host innate immune system.
Thank you.
So we have T lymphocytes, we have B lymphocytes, and we have the NK lymphocytes or killer cells which originate in the lymphoid follicle. I cannot present like this if lot of people are talking in my presentation. I lose my concentration.
Show and tell you.
Vijay Sharma,
Somebody is teaching her child on a live webinar.
please carry on, please.
Yeah, so when we see lymphocytes, lymphocytes include the T lymphocytes, the B lymphocytes, and as I mentioned, the NK lymphocytes, natural killer cells lymphocytes. Now, when we talk of B lymphocytes, they produce antibodies and they help also to alert the T lymphocytes. When we look at T lymphocytes, they destroy the compromised cell in the body and they help alert other leukocytes. T cells, they recognize a non-self target, such as a pathogen, only after antigens have been processed and presented in combination with a self-receptor, which is called a major histocompatibility complex molecule. We'll learn about that later. And it kills cells that are infected with viruses and other pathogens or otherwise damaged or dysfunctional cells. Now we have the killer T cells we just saw, and then we have the helper T cells, which regulate both innate and adaptive immune response and help determine which immune response the body makes to a particular pathogen. These cells have toxic activity like the T cells, and they do not kill infected cells like the T cells, or clear pathogens directly. So they are basically helper T cells. A third minor subtype are the white T cells. Now these cells recognize intact antigens not bound to the MHC receptors. In contrast, the B cell antigen specific receptor is an antibody molecule. We'll see about antibodies as we move forward. Now on the B cell surface, which recognizes whole pathogen without any need for antigen, we will learn about antibodies when we talk of adaptive immunity. Each lineage of B cell expression is a different antibody. So the complete set of B cell antigen receptors represent all the antibodies that the body can manufacture. Now, before going to innate and adaptive immunity, we should know what are the tissues and organs of immune system. The tissues of immune system consist of the generative lymphoid organs, in which T and B lymphocytes mature and become competent to respond to antigens, and the peripheral lymphoid organs, in which adaptive immune responses to microbes are initiated. So we have generative lymphoid organs and we have peripheral lymphoid organs. Now, examples of these lymphoid organs are our thymus, where the T cells grow and mature during childhood. But by early teens, the thymus begins to atrophy and thymic stroma is replaced by adipose tissue. Nevertheless, the residual T lymphopoiesis continues throughout adult life, and our mature T cells can divide to make new T cells. Then we have the bone marrow, we have the spleen, we have the liver. Now, liver has a wide range of functions, including immunological effects. The reticuloendothelial system of the liver contains many immunologically active cells, which act as sieve for antigens carrying to it via the portal system. Most of the proteins, including the complement proteins, which are needed in the immune system, are produced in the liver, including the different type of enzymes needed for immune functioning. Liver is one organ which has to be healthy if the immune system has to be healthy. And this is where comes the role of liver-specific medicines in homeopathy. We have amazing liver function modifying medicines like Lycopodium, like Chelidonium, Chionanthus, Cedron, which can be given in associated with the symptomatically indicated medicine to augment the health of the liver. There are certain drainage medicines for liver, there are certain stimulatory medicines for liver, which help indirectly to augment our immune system. Then we talk about lymphoid tissue clumps. This is very important. These are areas of lymphoid tissue throughout the body, and their job is to trap antigen and present them to the lymphocytes to trigger an immune response. Now, if you see this picture, we have skin-associated lymphoid tissue called SALT, and we have three types of tissues, lymphoid tissues here, which belong to the category of mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues. Why? Because they are in the mucosal surfaces of our body. Now, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues is divided into, we call it BALT, or bronchi-associated lymphoid tissue, which is present in the lower respiratory organ as well as in bronchial patches. Then we have the GALT, or gut-associated lymphoid tissue, which includes the intestinal mucosa, the Peyer's patches, the appendix, and then we have also urogenital mucosa contributing here. And then we have the NALT, or the nasopharyngeal, including the pharyngeal, palatine, lingual tonsils, and the upper respiratory mucosa. The net effect of NALT and SALT system is to protect the body at all surfaces, wherever an interface with the external environment exists. Other important parts of the immune system are lymph vessels and lymph nodes. Moving forward, if you see the proteins of the immune system, immune markers are basically proteins that determine our ability to resist harmful agents. Antibodies are specific to a given antigen. Unlike the innate system cells, the adaptive immunity cells are very specific. And we will look into this again later. Then we have the complement system. Now, complement system is a collection of circulating and membrane-associated proteins that are associated in defense against microbes. Many complement proteins are proteolytic enzymes, and the complement activation involves the sequential activation of these enzymes. The complement cascade may be initiated by any of the three pathways. The alternative pathway, which is triggered when some complement protein are activated on microbial surfaces and cannot be controlled, because complement regulatory proteins are not present on microbes, but present on host cells. So the alternative pathway is a component of the innate immunity. Then we have the classical pathway, which is most often triggered by antibodies that bind to microbes or other antigen, and is thus a component of the humoral arm of adaptive immunity, which we will be seeing later. Then we have the lectin pathway. Now, lectin pathway is activated when a carbohydrate binding plasma protein called MBL or mannose binding lecithin. It binds to its carbohydrate ligands on microbes. This lectin activates protein of the classical pathway, but because it is initiated by a microbial product, in the absence of antibody, it is a component of innate immunity. Now here, we should also understand cytokines. Now the word cytokine has been a lot in picture nowadays. Even lay people know about cytokine and cytokine storms during COVID. But what are cytokines? The word cytokine is derived from two cells. Cyto meaning cell and kinos meaning movement. So cytokines are cell signaling molecules that aid cell-to-cell communication in the immune responses and stimulate the movement of cell towards site of inflammation, infection also, and trauma also. So they move the cells toward the site of need. Cytokine exists basically in peptide, protein, or glycoprotein form. And there are a large family of molecules that are classified in various different ways due to an absence of an unfulfilled classification system till date. Examples of cytokines includes agents like interleukins, interferons, and tumor necrosis factor. Cytokines can exert systemic as well as local effects. A cytokine's action may affect the same cell it was secreted from. It can affect other cells nearby or may act in a more endocrine manner and produce effects across the whole of the body, such as in the case of fever. The most current terminology used to describe cytokines is immunomodulating agents, and that is what our homeopathic medicines also act like. Or, in other words, agents that modulate or alter the immune system response. Cytokines are important regulators of both the innate as well as the adaptive immune system. And what are their functions? Basically, some of the general functions are acute inflammation, chronic inflammation, as well as regulation of metabolic pathways within cells of muscles, adipose tissues, as well as central nervous system and liver. Then we have to also know about major histocompatibility complex, which is MHC. Now, MHC basically is a group of genes that code for proteins found on the surface of cells that help the immune system recognize the foreign substance. MHC proteins are found in all higher vertebrates. In human beings, the complex is also called human leukocyte antigen system, HLA system. Now, the function of MHC molecule is to bind peptide derived from pathogens and display them on the cell surface for the recognition of the pathogen by the appropriate T cells. Now, the consequences are almost always deleterious to the pathogen. Virus-infected cells are killed, macrophages are activated to kill bacteria living in their intracellular vesicles, and B cells are activated to produce antibodies that eliminate or neutralize extracellular pathogens. So MHC class, we have two types of MHCs, MHC class 1 and MHC class 2 proteins. They play a very pivotal role in the adaptive branch of immune system. Both classes of proteins share the task of presenting peptides on the cell surface for recognition by cells. We will be looking at that as we move forward. Now, many proteins involved in antigen processing and antigen presentation are encoded by genes within these major histocompatibility complexes. Then we have to know about cluster of differentiation or CD. Now, cluster of differentiation or CD is a method used to identify cell surface molecules for immunophenotyping. CD markers, which are also known as CD antigens, are the cell surface molecules bound on cells involved in the immune system. Now we have to know little about opsonization also. So what is opsonization? It is a process of coating pathogens to promote phagocytosis, or in other words, to make the pathogen tastier for our phagocytes. C3b, one of the complement coming from the liver, it coats microbes and promotes the binding of these microbes to phagocytes by virtue of receptors for C3b that are expressed on the phagocytes. Thus, microbes that are coated with complement proteins are rapidly ingested and destroyed by phagocytes. This process of coating a microbe with molecules that are recognized by receptors on phagocyte is known as opsonization. So opsonization functions as a bridge between pathogen and the phagocyte, and it enhances the phagocytic ability of our phagocytes. So again, what is opsonization? The process of coating pathogens to promote phagocytosis. The proteins which perform these functions are known as opsonins. So there are two major types of opsonins. One we have just talked about, the complement system, especially from that the C3b and our antibodies. Coming back to the immune system working again, as we see, the first layer is the barrier immunity. Actually, barrier and innate are clubbed together, but for understanding clearly, I have taken them separately. And the most important part of the barrier immunity is the skin. Skin is considered as the largest organ of the human body, and we all know with a surface area of approximately 1.73 square meters. It not only provides a physical barrier that prevents any pathogen from entering our body, but it also provides protection by means of its chemical and biological barriers. Most microbial infections are acquired through the epithelial barrier of the skin, and gastrointestinal, respiratory, genitourinary system also play a part. The earliest defense mechanism activate all these sites are the epithelia, providing physical barrier and antimicrobial molecules, and also the lymphoid cells. Skin cells contain the immune cells that stop the microbes from invading our body. Now, similar type of barriers in barrier immunity, as we have just seen, is also provided by many other surfaces, like in the lungs, we have the cilia, various kinds of antimicrobial chemicals like the surfactants and defensins, which help to stop the invading pathogen. Stomach, we have the low pH acid, which kills ingested pathogens. And tears in the eyes has antimicrobial agent like lysozyme. So when we are treating conjunctivitis or blephara or just a lacrimal blockage with superadded infection with medicines like euphrasia, argentum nitricum, arnica, we are actually stimulating this lysozyme. Now, coming to innate immunity. What happens when a microorganism crosses the barrier immunity and enters the body? At this time, it is met with our next level, which is innate immunity. Innate means, out of innate, if we see in means inside, nate means born. It refers to non-specific defense mechanisms, mind you, non-specific, that comes into play immediately or within 1 hour of an antigen's appearance in the body. Already, it is present before birth. We are born with our innate immunity. And here, there is a food for thought. When a child is in a mother's womb and the mother is going through a lot of emotional trauma and stress, that child is born with a very poor innate immunity. And we see, when we take the case, a history of emotional suppression in the mother. In a child, when we take the case of a child having recurring UTIs or recurring allergic infections. But this is just a food of thought. Don't we all think, even here homeopathy has a role. Our medicines like Staphylococcus aureus, Natrum mur, Ignatia, don't they prevent that child to be born with a pure innate immunity? So this is just a food of thought, that homeopathic medicines can even stimulate the immune system of a child in the uterus of a mother. As I discussed, innate immunity is non-specific. That means it has a similar mechanism for killing all the pathogens. And barrier immunity is also a part of innate immunity only. Now, if we see the components of innate immunity, we have the cellular components. We have already seen the neutrophils, macrophages, dendrite cells, NK cells, mast cells, basophil, eosinophils. And then we have the effector molecules. We just talked about the complement proteins and the cytokines. Next, we see the function of innate immunity. Now, function, if we divide into 4, the first one is to recognize the pathogen. Secondly, they know how to engulf pathogens and also try to destroy the pathogens. Third, they alarm other immune cells so that they can also come and together lead to a stronger immune response. And 4 is coordinating with the adaptive immune response and to let the adaptive immune system know about the nature of the pathogen. Now, if we talk of recognizing pathogen, the first job is obviously recognition, and how macrophages or dendritic cells understands that it is a pathogen. Recognition is done by specific receptors which are present on the macrophages, dendrite cells, or even B cells. So what aspect of the pathogen these cell types determine? They determine the pathogen-associated molecular patterns, which are also called PAMP. In simple words, PAMP are molecular signatures of the pathogens, which is determined by the receptors present on the macrophages or dendritic cells. We talk about this a little later in some more detail. Now, here we are looking at a dendrite cell, which is displaying here a pathogen. Derived antigen, pathogen-derived antigen we are looking here on a class 2 MHC. Now, before it can display the pathogen-derived antigen, it has to understand that it is a pathogen. And that is done with the help of pattern recognition receptors. Pattern recognition receptors. And one of them is the toll-like receptors we are looking here. These toll-like receptors are pattern recognition receptors. There are a lot of toll-like receptors present on the dendrite cells. As you can see, lot of toll-like receptors present on the dendrite cell. For example, we have the TLR2N1, which is for the bacteria and parasites. We have 2 and 6, which is basically responsible for gram-positive bacteria and fungi. And both of these, the 1 and 2, are heterodimers. Now, we have to note here that TLRs can be both homodimer as well as heterodimer. Now, homodimer TLRs, such as the TLR5, which TLR5 will be for bacterial flagella. It will determine the bacterial flagella, and TLR4 will recognize the cell wall component of gram-negative bacteria. There are also many TLRs which represent in the endosome. This is the endosome in the dendritic cell. So there are many TLRs which are present in the endosome. Example, TLR3, TLR7, TLR9, and so on. Now, many of these are responsible for determining the intracellular pathogens. So most of them determine the viral DNA and viral RNA. Now, having the overview, what type of pattern receptors are present on our dendritic cells, let us try to understand the process of detection, which is basically an intrinsic signaling pathway where the pathogen-derived molecular pattern is bound to the toll-like receptors, and after binding, there are signaling pathways which are initiated. These are the signaling pathways which are initiated. So these signals to the nucleus, here is the nucleus of the cell, these signals to the nucleus and lead to the transcription of several genes. And the major ones are certain cytokine genes, example, the IL-1, IL-6 and TNF alpha genes. Now we know where these IL-1, 6 and TNF alpha is coming from. It's coming from the nucleus after transcription of genes because of these pathways which are starting because of the dendritic cell activation. Now there are other TLRs present in endocytic vesicles, and these TLRs signal via a different signaling pathway. Like here we see, they have a different signaling pathway. Now these involves interferons and response factors. This is also transcription activator, which can activate different set of genes, and thereby they mediate the response. So depending on the pathogen, the TLR signaling will also be different and would lead to different kind of cytokines or different kind of interferon productions. Now there are other kind of patterns receptors present on dendritic cells or other innate immunity cells. They are the CLR, the C-type lectin we call them. They are the receptors important for fungal patterns. There are RLR, which are Rig-like receptors. They determine the RNA and ultimately lead to a separate set of gene expressions for the viruses. There are NR or NOD-like receptors which work via a totally separate pathway. I'm not going into all the pathway. That's quite a much complex study. Maybe some other time we can take a presentation on the pathways. Now, all these work by separate pathways and activate different transcription factors, giving rise to separate sets of gene expression. So all of these will have different kinds of responses, leading to formation of different type of cytokine chains. Now, the biggest problem comes with innate system is that they have limited specificity. The TLR4 molecule, here we can see the TLR4 molecule, it will be determining the lipopolysaccharide of the bacteria, but it cannot tell us what this lipopolysaccharide is coming from, which strain of bacteria it is coming from. That it cannot tell. So that is the reason they have limited specificity. They can tell it is coming from bacteria, but which strain they cannot tell. And here we need a more specific immune system, and that is done by our adaptive immune system. So talking about the recognition part again, first of all, there will be the recognition of these pathogens, associated molecule patterns, and then it will be coordinated with the adaptive immune system. And the components from adaptive immune systems will eventually mount a specific immune response. So here is a dendritic cell again. It recognizes a pathogen. It will first engulf the pathogen, and after engulfing pathogen with the help of lysozymes, these pathogens will be degraded and their compounds will be displayed to the class 2 MHC molecules, as dendritic cells are classical antigen presenting cells. So we'll have class 2 MHCs here. Now these dendritic cells will have to coordinate with the adaptive immunity system. That is why that's why it will migrate all the way to the lymph node. And inside the lymph node, there are specific regions for T cells and B cells. So in the paracortex of the lymph node, this particular dendritic cell will activate the T cell, which eventually activate the B cell, which will generate the plasma cell, and ultimately these B cells can proliferate into a lot and give rise to a long life plasma cell. So all this communication between the innate and adaptive immunity is only possible via a dendritic cell. Other components of the innate system is the complementary system, as we discussed. Now, this is the structure of a bacteria. Complementary proteins can coat the bacteria and make it less harmful or less active. We can see here. And this process is called opsonization. After being opsonized, these bacteria can ultimately be destroyed by the complement pathway. So first, there will be antibody-mediated complement fixation. Here is the antibody. So antibody-mediated complement fixation, which leads to recruitment of several component proteins, and there is a pore formation. We can see complement protein are collected here, forming the membrane attack complex, creating a pore in the pathogen, the bacteria, which leads to the fluid leakage and eventually leads to the bursting of the pathogen. So this is one way the pathogen can be destroyed by the innate immune system using the complementary system. Point to be noted here is that this complement fixation pathway is not specific, and it can be the same irrespective of any kind of bacterial strain. Now, another important function of the innate immune system is to alarm other components of the immune system. For example, this case, a dendritic cell and the macrophage, they have recognized some pathogens. And now they want to send the alarm signal and they are calling for backup. So this signal is received by the cells which are circulating in the bloodstream, such as our neutrophil. Now this neutrophil would sense this signal and then change its cytoskeletal rearrangement to move out of this blood vessel and come into the tissue space. And in the tissue space, there are other chemokine-mediated factors which allow these neutrophils to find its way towards the infected site. So it has come here towards the infected site. And thereby neutrophil can join these macrophages and dendritic cells. It has joined the macrophages and the dendritic cells to fight the pathogen further. So this is how they are calling for backup. And that there is another component which is a cold blood killer and the lethal weapon of the immune system, which is known as the natural killer cells or the NK cells. They are the natural killer cells and they are born to kill. There are many important features of a natural killer cell. Natural killer cells have set of activatory and inhibitory receptors. They're highly loaded with phagocytic granules and are loaded with enzymes that can degenerate pathogens or other cell types. They have a signature NK1 to 1.1 surface receptor. They also have FC receptor. FC receptor is for the antibodies and fast ligands. So now, whenever there is a class 1 MHC derived peptide, class 1, here you can see MHC derived peptide, NK cell would not engage. NK cell's inherent tendency is to kill the pathogen. But when there is an inhibitory signal, which is provided by this class 1 MHC and inhibitory receptor interaction, then NK cell would disengage. But when class 1 mediated peptide are not displayed, then these NK cells become super angry. And when they become super angry, they now would engage and thereby kill the whole pathogen along with the cell type. So NK cells will destroy the whole cell as well as all the pathogens which are intracellular to this cells would destroy. That is, they are called the killer cells. That is how NK cells kill pathogens, and it's also non-specific but very effective component, and they have very highly killing potential. So now we learned how our innate immune system recognizes pathogens, how they can engulf and destroy these pathogens. Thirdly, we learned how they can send alarm signals such that other immune components can be recruited into the site of infection. And lastly, we have looked at how they can interact with the adaptive immune system components such that they can coordinate a specific and a stronger immune response. So now let us see what our adaptive immunity is. The adaptive immunity is characterized by three main things: specificity, self and non-self recognition, and memory cells. There are two main types of adaptive immunity depending on which cells are activated. So there are B cells and there are T cells. If B cells are in charge, it is known as the humoral immunity. It is an extracellular response, and that's a response to microbes like bacteria. If T cells are activated, and when T cells are responsible, it is called cell-mediated immunity. That means it is intracellular, like the tumor cells or viruses, which we know replicate within a cell. B cells and T cells all originate from the same precursor cell, which we had seen. Now, in the bone marrow, T cells require the thymus. B cells are developing in the bone marrow, and T cells are requiring the thymus for maturation. B cells are released into the bloodstream where they mature. And how can we differentiate between B cells and T cells? A very important thing to know is the cluster of differentiation which we had seen, or CD markers. CD marks the cell. So for example, B cell has CD19 as a marker on its surface, whereas T cell has CD3 marker on its surface. So when a cell has a CD3 marker, it is a CD3 cell. There are two types of T cells. The first one is the helper T cell, which has a CD3 because it's a T cell, and another CD which is the cytotoxic T cell. So first we have the T helper cell, also known as CD4, and we have the T cytotoxic cell, also known as CD8. Now, humoral immunity is basically antibodies. These antibodies are known as immunoglobulins. Now, we have mainly 5 types of antibodies or immunoglobulins: the IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE, IgD. Remember the mnemonic GAMED. Antibodies lock into the antigen, but they do not kill it, only mark it for death. So they lock into the antigen and mark it for death. We'll discuss about that. The killing is the job of other cells, like the phagocytes. Now, if we see these 5 antibodies, what are their functioning in brief? IgG marks microbes so other cells can recognize and deal with them. IgM is expert in killing bacteria. IgA congregates in fluids such as the tears and saliva, where it protects gateways into the body. IgE protects against parasites, and it is also to blame for allergies. IgD stays bound to B cells, helping them to start the immune response. Now, this type of immunity, humoral immunity or T-dependent immunity or thymus-dependent immunity, because we know that T cells depend on the thymus, is the first type of humoral immunity, T-dependent. Now, the second type of humoral immunity, which is T-independent. Now, we should remember actually that humoral immunity is a B cell response, but the first type had depended on T cell, where a T helper cell rather, and the antigen is a protein. And now when this antigen binds to the T helper cell along with an MHC2, here we see it, MHC2 antigen, these two will activate the T helper cell. So when antigen protein is binding with MHC2, it is stimulating the T helper cell along with an MHC2 here. Now when this antigen binds the T helper cells along with an MHC2, these two will activate the helper cell. It will activate the helper cells. And the T helper cell will act as an antigen presenting cell here, APC. And it will bind to the B cell by certain proteins like the CD40, B7, and co-stimulatory proteins, other co-stimulatory proteins, and they will present this antigen to the B cell. When the B cell is activated, it will become a plasma cell and start producing antibodies. T helper cells are responsible for clonal proliferation, and so the B cell will proliferate to make plasma cells, as we mentioned, which are antibody producing cells and memory cells. So the next time the body encounters the infection, memory cells will act rapidly, and this immune response is actually a very strong immune response. Unlike the second type, which is the T-independent response, meaning it does not depend on T cells. The antigen in this case is a polysaccharide or a lipopolysaccharide. This will directly activate the B cell now, and this response is a weak response. It will not form memory cells, and it will only activate the IgM immunoglobulin. Whereas we have seen in the previous response, lot of antibodies are released. Here, only IgM is released. Now, this is a structure of an antibody, just for us to understand how an antibody will be looking like. it is made up of 4 polypeptide chains. We can see 2 heavy chains marked in blue here and 2 lighter chain marked in orange here. Now this region here, which binds to the antigen, is known as the variable region. This binds to the antigen. And it varies according to the antigen then that binds to. This area here is known as the FC region. This region binds to the natural killer cells, the neutrophils and the eosinophils. So we have the FC area in an antibody, we have the variable area in the antibody. Now let us take this example. Let us imagine that this is a bacteria. This is a bacteria displaying a surface antigen here. Now the antibody will bind to the bacteria here. And this region, which is known as the variable region, is specific to this antigen. The FC region is going to recruit now the white blood cell. And this will aid in the engulfing process of the pathogen. Now, if we look at primary infection, the first response is usually IgM, whereas in the secondary infection, the response is more with IgG, which is more potent. The primary response is longer and weaker, whereas the secondary response will be very quick and stronger. The second type, which is the cell-mediated immunity, depends on T cells. Here, 2 types, which are CD4 and CD8 T cells. CD4 has 2 types, basically helper 1 and T helper 2. T helper 1 here, T helper 1 is responsible for activating the CD8 cell, which later on activates the macrophages. T helper 2 activates the B cell and now act as an antigen presenting cell as a whole. The CD8 or cytotoxic cell as we know it, as the name suggests, it will kill the cell. And thus the tumor cells and viruses will be destroyed by the T cytotoxic or CD8 cell. Now, if we talk of cell-mediated immunity, it is easy to remember this formula. Initially, when we talked of MHCs, this is how it is easy to understand it. And the formula we need to know is antigen plus MHC will be activating T lymphocytes, and then we'll get or initiate a response. What is MHC and what type of response do they give? MHC, as we have seen, the major histocompatibility complexes. They are of 2 types we had seen, MHC class 1 and MHC class 2. MHC class 1 is composed of HLA-A, HLA-B and HLA-C, whereas MHC class 2 include the HLA-D, and there are many types like HLA-DR, HLA-DP, HLA-DQ. So what are HLAs? HLAs are nothing but human leukocyte antigens. These are genes from the short arms of human chromosome number 6. And these HLA genes are clustered to make this complex. Now, MHC class 1 is found on all nucleated cells. The main goal is to activate the CD8, and CD8 will eliminate the host cell itself. MHC class 2 is presented on antigen presenting cells, and they help the T helper cells to present the antigen. As we see, when MHC and the antigen bind, they activate the T cells, and T cells will produce ultimately cytokines. And the two most important cytokines which are produced are the IL-2, which help the T cell growth and memory T cell and activate the CD8. And the second cytokine is interferon, which activates the macrophage. When the macrophages and the CD8 are activated, they promote cell killing by perforins, which are proteins that create holes or pores in a membrane, by granzymes. Granzymes are enzymes that break up the membrane, like the protease and cytokines, which induce cell death or apoptosis. So this is the whole innate and adaptive immune system, as short as I could make. Well done. I want to come out of this. Dr. Tanvi, Dr. Singh.
Yes, Dr.
So I hope I have covered it in the short time we had to understand such a big topic.
Yes. Is it over, Dr. Deepak, from your side?
Yeah. I wanted to explain about the innate and adaptive immunity. Now, a little I want to I talked in between, but again, I would like to ask all of us homeopaths present today that when we see a symptom in a patient, when a patient comes to us and we see a symptom, we have to ask ourselves why that symptom is coming. What could be wrong? Not only in making our symptom totality, but also at the pathological level, what could be wrong? So we should always ask ourselves this question. And we can reach the answer correctly if we know the basic sciences, at least the key factors in the basic sciences responsible for creating the pathology. Dr. Hahnemann, he put the seed, and in his lifetime, he saw the sapling growing and converting into a tree. Today, that tree has spread its wing all over the world with abundant fruits, which we all are eating. But it is our duty, to make that tree look more beautiful, to prune it. So individually and as a collective group, I think we all should be doing. Here, I would like to actually thank my friends and my classmates, few from my senior classes, few from my junior, who are in the group, we call group of CME group of 1986. And I would like to even name them because they have done an amazing work in attending these CMEs every day and contributing to these CMEs. It was started by Dr. Ritamba from Delhi, Dr. Amrish from Delhi, Dr. Jyoti from Bangalore, Dr. Sharuka from Delhi, Dr. Ritu from Delhi, Dr. Monica from Delhi, Dr. Neena, Dr. If at present, if I forget someone, please pardon me. But ours is a group where we meet every day for 1.5 hours and we try to discuss how homeopathy can be applied on a pathological basis alongside learning the key features of every drug. So this is my request to everyone. Whenever we see a patient, we should ask ourselves where the symptom is coming from and which medicine, not only on symptom totality, but on the pathology also is indicated. And when we give the medicine and we see a response, like we all see so many cases of cold and cough getting better so fast. Now, in the COVID era also, many of my friends are treating COVID patients with amazing success rate. Yes, they're not dealing with 2B and 3 stage, but up to 2A stage, and they're preventing them into going into 2B and 3rd stage. So how our homeopathic medicine works should be in the back of our mind. As I mentioned in the beginning of the lecture, the antihistaminic property of apis, so where it might be working, the basophils, mast cells, where arnica would be working on our macrophages. Even when I discussed in between where Staphylococcus aureus and Natramur are working, they can stimulate our innate immune response, which has been altered due to emotional traumas. And it can also help even in the adaptive immune response in modifying the disease process. That is why a patient with mumps who has received already the vaccination for mumps, why he should develop mumps again? There is something wrong with his adaptive immunity. Na? It should have been permanent. And there, when we select our medicines, Pelotidinum, Pulsatilla, Malsol, Rustox, whichever is indicated, what is it doing? It's augmenting the adaptive immune response. So this is what I have to offer Dr. Tanvir today. I'll pass the mic to Dr. Rao, who is the chairman of the committee today, so that we can all finish on time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharmaji. You have done very good job, because it is the need of the time. The way you have explained all the big topic, it is very big topic. It is not easy to make it so comprehensive and in a too short time. There are many things which we want to learn more in detail also, because it is not so easy to understand all the things in one go. Because reading the chat box, there are few comments, it is all gone through their heads, because we need to refresh all of our this knowledge. We need to read the books again and again. So it is.
That is why sorry to interfere, Dr. Tanvir. That is why, although I did not want to, but still I started with the basic cells, from the origin of the cells to the type of the cells, so that it becomes easy to understand. And I'm really sorry if still it became a little difficult to understand. But till we understand the basic things, it becomes a little difficult to understand the process. So my request is, please go through this again. It will help you a lot in understanding the action of our medicines.
Right, sir.
Back to you.
Sir, thank you very much, Dr. Deepak Sharma ji. Before passing on to our respected moderator today, Dr. Raman Rao sir, there are a few questions we can take up, Dr. Deepak ji. Yeah.
Sure, why not?
In the chat box, is there any difference between immunity and susceptibility?
See, susceptibility is a word which we homeopaths use a lot. It is a disposition to get affected. Immunity is the power with which we fight the infection. So susceptibility is which leads us to get affected, and immunity is which fight our infection.
Mm-hmm. And there is another question I can see in the, how could we correlate this step of micro reactions with symptoms?
See, that is the biggest job. Whenever there is an innate immune system activity happening, what is happening? Inflammation. Inflammation is the first step happening in our innate immune system. We can correlate it to the symptoms. There is pain, but what type of pain is patient specific? There is a swelling. How much is the swelling is patient specific. So we can select a medicine, let us say belladonna. When there is an excess of vascular throbbing. Some people will have inflammation without much throbbing. So we can easily correlate with our symptoms to be selected for selection of a medicine. APIS, they will be pricking. Not all patients with inflammation will have pricking. So we know the symptoms of innate immune response, the inflammatory symptoms, which are common symptoms, and whenever those symptoms are presenting in an uncommon way, it makes the selection of a medicine very easy. I hope this explains the question.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite today's moderator, respected Dr. M.D.V. Raman Rao, sir. Please share your views about this today's presentation. Dr. Raman Rao, sir. Dr. M.D.V. Raman Rao, sir. Unmute yourself, sir, please. Dr. Raman Rao, sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Is it okay now?
Yes, please. Yeah, you are audible now, sir. Please.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening and a very big namaskar to all the people here. Dr. V.K. Gupta, Dr. M.A. Rao, Dr. Tanvir Hussain, Dr. Mutinder Singh, and the speaker, Dr. Deepak Sharma. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was an exhaustive, excellent narration and a wonderful explanation of a very, very complex subject, the immune system, and how it works for us and how it works against us. It's a wonderful narration, and the subject is very difficult to understand, and it is very difficult, equally difficult or more difficult to explain to a gathering. Because human beings we are, how many systems are there, how many organs are there, how many cells are there. It's a very intricate, mysterious system in the creation. And it is a very, very tough subject explained in a lucid manner, most comprehensive manner, for which I must congratulate Dr. Deepak Sharma for his efforts. It's not an easy task, sir. You have done a wonderful job. That is the first thing. And secondly, I am from Dr. Gururaju Memorial College, Government College, Guruvada, and my principal was Dr. M. Kutumbarao. He was a qualified man in both the systems of medicine, allopathic side as well as homeopathic side. And he used to tell us repeatedly, the clinical medicine, allopathic side, they have got big words. And the homeopathic side, we have got good medicines. So they have big medicines, I mean big words and confusing words. And homeopathic side, we are having good working medicines. So that's he used to ask us, don't get afraid of the words, don't get confused, don't get bamboozled with this big jugglery of words. But all the same, we have passed the lot of time from say 80s to 2020s now. So we can't give a vacant expression to our patients and to the so-called scientific world that we don't know anything about the clinical medicine, we stick to only vital force and homeopathic principles, etc. We have to do a balancing act now. That is the reason why homeopathic medicine is not just a science but an art. So a homeopathic physician has to be a master scientist and a master artist, and he should do a perfect job of both. So let us learn the clinical terminology, and at the same time, let us follow the basic principles of homeopathy as were laid down by the master himself and his predecessors and his disciples. So immunity, or the ability to withstand and to fight against the microbes, etc. So we have got a better word, I think, susceptibility, as somebody was inquiring earlier. Susceptibility is our response and reaction to the stimuli. And susceptibility, I think, is a much, much bigger word, which a much bigger meaning, much comprehensive word, and it envelops many things, including immunity that way. Because susceptibility, as long as is normal, the person enjoys full health. And once, if the susceptibility is altered, if it becomes morbid, then the fellow becomes sick. I'll give you, we find several examples. Dr. Stuart Close in his book, and Dr. H.A. Roberts in his Art of Cure by Homeopathy, and all the other books, they give several examples in the nature. First, we'll go to the vegetable kingdom, plants rather. And in Connecticut, USA, one gentleman was curious why peaches were not grown in a particular soil for 50 long years, 5 decades. Peaches were not grown in the soil in spite of the best efforts. So he rather tested the soil and all that, and he found the soil lacking in potassium. And when he started mixing a little bit of the potassium, he found peaches growing up again. And animals also, the polar bear cannot survive the southern plains, the heat and all that. And a tiger, Bengal tiger, cannot survive in the Antarctica, etc., not for a day. And the human beings also need certain conducive climate for their healthy survival. So, Dr. Stuart Close in one of the chapters says that it is first the human being that becomes sick before he is exposed to the sick man. Supposing there is a gathering of 40, 50 people, and one fellow is already infected with some viral complaint, and of all the others, only one fellow may get sick with the contagion. And here, Dr. Close says that the person is long before sick long before he came into contact with the contagion. So this contagion is only acting as an exciting cause, but the inherent weakness is there in his economy, that is the altered susceptibility. So in which case, what is it that homeopathy proposes? What is it that homeopathy has got to offer? Do we have any medicines to alter the susceptibility, to bring it back to its normalcy, to satisfy the morbid susceptibility? Yes, we have got definitely lots of medicines. Any indicated medicine, any medicine that is similar to the person, prescribed and repeated in right potencies, will act as a curative one, and it will satisfy the morbid susceptibility. In other words, it increases the person's immunity and it helps him fight the organisms. So the classic case is the dreaded Japanese encephalitis epidemic in Andhra Pradesh state in the latter part of 1970s and early part of 1980s. So a team of homeopathic physicians were requested to go through the epidemic and find out the prophylaxis. And they came up with an excellent answer with BCT, belladonna, followed by calcareous, followed by tuberculum, repeated judiciously in areas where the epidemic was very virulent to persons who are not affected. And the trick worked wonderfully well in Andhra Pradesh state, particularly in Rayalaseema, where the spread of the epidemic was immediately arrested. And later on, the same cue was taken by different other state governments also, with wonderful success rates. And people, whenever there is an breakout of epidemic, people rush to our hospitals asking for a preventive, a prophylaxis. Is there any preventive medicine for chikungunya? Is there a preventive medicine in homeopathy for coronavirus? Is there any preventive for conjunctivitis? And is there any medicine in homeopathy that can improve the immunity? And is there any immunity booster as such? Yes, of course, there are several. But The only thing is that homeopathic physician should be able to select the simillimum and repeat the medicine in right potencies. When I say the right potencies, Hahnemann's contribution to the medical world and his contribution to the humanity at large is a phenomenal one. Starting from his lab seminars to drug proving, as we all know, his organ of medicine, Medica Pura, etc., etc. But there was a gem hidden in his sixth edition of Organon, that is the LM potencies or 0.1 potencies or the 50 millismol scale potencies. So if the simillimum is repeated judiciously in 50 millismol scale potencies, it definitely increases the immunity and it helps the fellow to fight the organisms and to live peacefully with the changing climate and environmental factors. And we can have lots of examples in our day-to-day routine practice. And I know we very frequently see such cases. I know one mother coming to me with her kid, a boy aged about 6 years, getting into attacks of repeated sore throats, slight fever, coryza, cough, and all that. And the fellow was under homeopathic treatment for a year and a half. And he was given belladonna as and when he became sick. And Bell was able to cure him or relieve him of his suffering within a couple of days promptly. And another couple of months down the line is to come back again. So when he consulted me for the recurrent infections, he was given belladonna because, as everybody knows, that throbbing pulse and all that was there, and red sore throat, everything was there. Classic case of belladonna. And after the reduction of the acute suffering, he was given Calcare later on, and which has put a full stop to the whole complaint again and again, not recurring. So what is it that Calcare has done in this case? It has brought back the altered susceptibility to normal levels, and it has satisfied the morbid susceptibility in the particular kid, and it made him able to eat, move around the polar climates, and live like any other child. That is nothing but an immunity booster. And we can have real examples like bryonia in acute conditions, unless it is followed by a deep-acting constitutional long-acting drug like natriureticum, the attacks keep coming back again and again. And one wonderful surprising in our textbooks, as Dr. Deepak Sharma was telling, lycopodium and liver. They have got definite, lycopodium has got a definite affinity to liver. And the immunodeficiency disorders and autoimmune disorders, the first one that comes into our mind, of course, is rheumatoid arthritis. And if we go through the provings by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, chronic diseases, there is only one drug that has proven the symptom. Inflamed finger joints. Inflamed finger joints. The only drug that has proved the symptom in bold letters. That's what is important. Bold letters you should understand, because a symptom that's a drug that has proved a symptom in bold letters is definitely working in that condition. It means that it has worked in many people, prominently proved. So lycopodium is the only drug that has proven this symptom in bold letters. And the wonderful thing is, if we go for Kent's Repachari, there with section extremities, upper extremities, and fingers, there we see joints inflammation, joints in fingers. So there is a wonderful coincidence, and lycopodium again here is the only drug that has proved the symptom, inflammation of the finger joints in Kent's Repertory. And in the same manner, immunity deficiency disorders, we find very often rheumatic fever, infants, tonsillitis, later on getting into rheumatic arthritis in adolescents, and later on ultimately succumbing to fatality with rheumatic heart. So there is a drug in Kent's repertory, section chest. If we go for pain's wandering and settling in heart. There's only one drug given in any grade, that is aromatericum, a very, very pronounced affinity to heart. An anti-syphilitic drug, a very deep acting drug. We see several cases wonderfully aromatericum bringing back the fellow from the clutches of death. And several examples we do find in our day-to-day routine. And tubercular lymphadenitis, belladonna may treat the case acutely, but it has to be followed by calcarecarb again. Maybe the fellow needs a couple of doses of tubercular. So these drugs are our immunity boosters, and homeopathy stands to treat any number of cases where immunity disorders are there. And James Taylor continues lectures on homeopathic mathematica. He reads separately natrum sulfur and psychosis, where he mentions about a simple fact that he says that he was not confident of treating asthmatic cases. He was not able to treat asthma for a very long time. And then he says he found that the answer is the natrum sulfur. Because whether it is antimony tartan or ipecac or arsenic or spongia, whatever it may be, the acute drug, unless it is treated with natrum sulfur, a couple of doses of natrum sulfur in high potencies will prevent further attacks, further repetition of further attacks, and it does a wonderful repairing job. And that is where the susceptibility is brought back to normalcy, and the immunity levels are increased, immunity levels are raised. How natrum sulfur works at a different molecular level is a different thing that needs a lot of research. And as Dr. Rajendran was mentioning earlier in the last lecture, so with all the technical instruments and infrastructure available to the homeopathic fraternity now, we may need to answer several questions later on. Maybe another last 10 years, a lot of research has been done in homeopathy with this nanoparticle technology and all that. So we do hope that answers will be found for all the questions. And then one word about Dr. Hahnemann himself, and the genetic disorders, metabolic disorders, autoimmune disorders, malnutrition cases, and you name it. You name it. And tomorrow we may come across several other names and several new diseases, so-called new diseases. But for all the diseases, for all the questions raised by the so-called scientific community, Dr. Hahnemann has got an excellent answer. Excellent answer. He gave it about 225 years ago, which is valid till today, which is going to be valid for any decades and centuries to come. And what is the answer? It is the similia similibus curantur, the law of similars, with which we can cure any number of cases, provided we should be competent enough to select the simillimum and repeat the drug judiciously in the potencies. And with these few words, I thank Dr. M.A. Rao and his team of CEC members, Dr. Mutinder Singh, Dr. Tanveer Hussain, particularly, because I am a big fan of you, Dr. Tanveer, your shairi. I can never forget the Amritsar session. And I'm a big fan of you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And one last word, this is not to mean that we should ignore the clinical terminology and the clinical medicine. Definitely not. We should do a very we should be doing a balancing act of clinical terminology and homeopathic philosophy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. M.D. Thank you very much, Dr. M.D. Raman Rao, sir, for your wonderful views about today's presentation. Dr. Deepak ji, there is one question one person has asked about that. Can we make uniform treatment protocol like modern system? There is
This is something which is not possible. We might for some pathological acute conditions where Dr. Henneman has also mentioned when he talks about organon. Organon, he has mentioned that causation and the presenting particular in acute disease. So when it is acute disease, we can base on causation and acute presentation, but not in chronic diseases. Number two, uniform formation is possible for organospecificity of medicines, which we can use along with medicine selected on totality.
yes. So
Definitely the uniformity can be there in certain medicines like arnica, as I discussed, calendula, which is a lymphatic cleanser, which is a circulatory and immune stimulant. And calendula is also one of the few homeopathic medicines which help in thrombocytes increase. It's a medicine can be used for increasing the platelet levels. It stimulates the bone marrow to manufacture more platelets. And I have verified this in so many cases. So here we can have a uniform system where we know that our medicines in a particular potency definitely does that work. But the final selection has to be on symptom totality. If there is an inflammation, we have to be sure whether it's belladonna indicated, apis indicated, aconite indicated, arsenic indicated, Hipersulf indicated. That we should all know. So uniform pattern to make is not possible.
thank you, Dr. Deepak. You have very rightly said that it is not possible to make a uniform protocol for all the patients suffering from one disease, because no two persons are alike in the world. Everybody is totally different from the other person. But before that, we should come to one platform that is it possible that 5 or 6, 10 homeopathic doctors, if they are sitting for one patient, can we come to one medicine? That is more important today to learn. In Dr.
If it is a pathology, we can. If it is selection on pathology, we can. Rather, we all will be the same. But when it comes to selection based on disposition, understanding of the mind of the patient, every person will understand the mind of the patient in his or her own way. And it also depends on the status of the patient at that time.
Yes.
You know, how much he will relate to you as a homeopath, he might not relate to the other one as a homeopath in the same way.
Yes. You're very right, sir. You're very right. I have explained one small story regarding Dr. Honeyman's time when he is one of his friend, pharmacist. He falls sick. Dr. Honeyman went to him about and he asked, friend, I came to know that you have fallen sick. What are the medicines you have taken till now? Have you taken your treatment? Then he has presented more than 67 different chemicals he has taken for his ailment. Dr. Honeyman was surprised and asked why you have taken 67 elements for your problem, because you never know the symptoms of these 67 elements on the human body. Then Dr. Honeyman said to that pharmacist, his friend, that you go to my friends, my disciples in the area who are more than 13 in number. You go to anyone, they will give you one single medicine. And he went to those doctors and everybody's prescription was same. So this is the beauty of standardization of our homeopathic knowledge. If we follow Organon Honeyman's teaching, then definitely we can come to one single medicine, which is the medicine for that patient at one particular time. So thank you very much, Dr. Deepak Sharma ji. Once again, you have made very nice presentation, though it was very, very tough also to understand. You have made it quite easy. There is one beautiful statement from Dr. Anshu Asri. Dr. Deepak, you have opsonized the complex subject of immunity and made it palpable for us. It's a compliment for you. So from all CEC members, I
thank you
very
Dr.
much.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak and Dr. Ramanna sir. So it was a great sorry for not being active today in the session. I was away and my network was not stable. So Dr. Tanveer has really done a job for me. Thank you, Dr. Tanveer. And we hope we are a team, and IAHP is raising the standard of education. Yes, Dr. Deepak, as you said, definitely we need more sessions on this. So thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Tanveer, and thank you all CEC committee, and announcement as ever that this session would be uploaded on YouTube very within 2-3 days. Dr. Sudhanshu Rao, Sudhanshu Arya is a key man because he is always very prompt, and the moment I share the recording, cloud recording link, and within hours he uploads. So, I have special thanks for Dr. Sudhanshu Arya, who is our webmaster, and Dr. Amir and everyone, Dr. V.K. Gupta sir. Thank you all. Today I have taken the role of Dr. Tanveer of Thanksgiving, and Dr. Tanveer has taken my role of hosting the.
Thank you, Dr.
Tanveer.
Thank you, Dr. Bhupender Singh. Thank you once again to all CC members, respected President Dr. M.A. Rao sir, and all CC members, Dr. Sudhanshu Arya, Dr. V.K. Gupta sir, and Dr. Deepak Sharma ji, all CC members and all audience. Thank you once again. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Have a nice time.
Thank you.